Hi, now we're going to create the patterns for our princess lines. Now here you can see a picture of the princess line exactly the same as what's in the PowerPoint presentation, where the panels go from the shoulder all the way down to the waist here, and with no darts at all the suppression in the bodice section of the princess line is actually all the shapes created through the seams. Now the very first thing I want you to do is get a piece of paper and draw a horizontal line across like this. Now once you've drawn your horizontal line, I want you to lay your patterns, the chest line or the bust line in your pattern, that horizontal line that goes from the underarm to the centre front and your underarm to the centre back. I want you to lay that on the line, and I want you to do the same with the back. Lay it on the line, and then I want you to draw around your patterns, around the pattern. Okay, as you normally do. Do exactly the same thing with the back, laying the horizontal line on the orange line, and then drawing around your patterns. Now I've already done this, as you can see from my video. I'm just one step ahead, so I'll get rid of the blocks. Now again, guys, it's always crucial that you label your patterns properly. You indicate what is the centre front and where the centre back is. So my centre back is here, so we don't ever get confused. So what I'm doing here is, again, I'm marking the darts up to the bust point here on the front. Again guys, I'm using a felt tip pen, and I don't want to see you using a pen. I want you to see you using an HB pencil. I'm only using the pen because the pencil just wouldn't show up on the video at all. So I'm marking in the darts on the front, and I'm now marking in the darts on the back. Now, so what we're going to do, you can begin to see the resemblance here. You can see these lines run in line with the darts. So what we're doing is this. I'm just going to, you can either trace off the pieces or you can cut them out. So, for example, for the front panel, I'm going to trace off the pattern here. I can trace it off, or you can trace it off using your tracing wheel, or you can lay a piece of paper on the top, or you can simply cut it out, in this case, from your we'll call this a pattern plan. This initial. So what I've marked around there in orange is the section that I'm going to trace off. The orange section there. Okay, if I bring back the sketch, here you can see we mark on the centre front line on the sketch. What I have traced off, is going to be that section of the pattern there. And the other section, which I think I'm going to do with green, I'm going to trace off this section. Let me show you how it works. So again, I'm literally marking these in different colours. green's not very bright green, is it? Right, there we go. So what I'm tracing off here now is this panel here, which is going to be the side front panel. Can you see? So that's the front dealt with. On the back here, again, we're just going to connect the darts from the shoulder end, from the shoulder dart to the waist dart, and I'm going to trace around the side section here in red. Again, the red's not coming up as beautifully as I would like. I have to get some nice vibrant pens for my next demos I'm going to do with you. Nice vibrant bright colours. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to trace off this section here, or cut it out, minus the dart. So we get rid of these darts, they no longer exist. And the same with the, let's go for a blue this time. And it is already in blue, so what I'm doing is I'm now going to trace off this section. So you can trace it off and keep your original plan like what you have here, or in this case you can simply just cut it out. So let me get my scissors. So cut out the pieces separately, get rid of that. So there's going to be my centre front panel. Cutting around the neckline, the rubbish, and cut out my centre front panel. Get rid of those dart inlays, we're no longer wanting them. And all of a sudden I'm creating and dividing the pattern up into panels. The side panel, front panel, and back. Get rid of all the rubbish. These darts no longer exist because we're suppressing this garment through the princess line panels. So now I've created my panels. Now, so I've got the 4 panels I need for my the back and the front of the princess line. Now, can you see here it's quite sharp? If it's quite sharp, I want you to take your scissors and just smooth off that little point there. Make it nice and smooth. And again, we've got a little sharp point there. Take your scissors and smooth off that little point there. Okay. Now, if we look at the diagram, this centre front, we've only created half of the pattern. So what you need to do here is create the full pattern. So what I need you to do is another piece of paper, place it on the fold and draw around that and cut it out on the fold. Now I've already created the patterns and labelled them. So here we let's look at them. So there was my original patterns that I produced from the block that we've just used, which is the bodice block. So let's look at the patterns. So I've already cut this out in the fold. I've already got that pattern, there it is there, and I've already cut it in the fold. So I now have the full centre front panel, which will now be all of that panel there, all of that. And the side panel I've already created as well, and I've also labelled all these for you. Okay, so I'm just going to replace that. I've already cut them. I've got my side back panel, which I've created there, and I've got my centre back panel, which is here. So I've now got all my patterns created. Just need to label them all. So I've got the full front here, no longer cutting this in the fold. So the centre front line is the green line. And the panel is called centre front panel. I'm going to cut out one of these to make up a garment, because we're going right across the centre front. Side front panel, again, we put on the grain line. And you can use the spots and crosses on your paper to mark your grain line, because you're laying your pattern up nice and straight on the spot and cross paper whenever you're doing the first draft there. So that's going to be a side front panel, and we need a left and a right of these. So you need a panel. Whenever we're sewing this, we need one to go there and one to go there. So in this case, we cut one pair. And on the back, we've got the side back panel. Again, we need left and right and cut one pair. And there's going to be an opening down the centre back of the garment. The zip, for example, could be in the centre back. So we have a centre back panel, and again we need a left and right. So we cut one pair. Now, we need to add what we refer to as balance notches to this and do some pattern checks. Now, the very first thing we need to check is that our two side seams here are matching, and they're matching beautifully. So we need to be able to sew that onto that. So basically, once you'd add on seam allowance, you literally be taking and you'd be sewing the seam up like that. Well, it is matching beautifully. So what we need to do here is put in something called balance notches to help you with the sewing process. So watch me again. I'm taking my patterns, I'm laying that on the top. I know these are exactly the same length, and I'm placing them together with the two patterns together, I'm putting in my first balance notch, which is going to help me with the sewing process. And I'm going to do the same thing here. These notches can just be positioned with the randomly down the seam, but make sure the patterns are lying firmly on top of each other and matching. So now I have notches. The notches are a little bit blunt, I think, and they're not cutting the paper very well. Okay, we now have balanced notches there. So whenever I'm sewing this, I'm literally laying this panel on top of this one, and I'm sewing up. If the notches are matching, we know that we're going to manage to sew it nice and accurately, and we come up here and the notches are matching, and they're matching up to the shoulder. So again, you put in balanced notches on the back panel in the same sort of manner, literally laying the patterns together like that, randomly put them in, but you must notch the two pattern pieces together, otherwise it's not going to work. So swivel that around a bit. Now, for you to make this up in a princess line bodice, you need to draw around that pattern again, all of these patterns again, and add a centimetre seam around every one of these seam edges, with the exception of the centre back where you would add 2 centimetres. So you can't cut this out in calico or any other fabric until you literally take these pieces, lay them on top of another piece of paper, and then mark. Okay, so now we're going to create the second princess line, and in this time the seam is not going into the shoulder, it's going into the armhole. Originally the last one we did, the seam was going in to the shoulder, but this time it's going into the armhole. So guys, once again, piece of paper, mark your orange line that I've done here, take your block, place it on the orange line and draw around the pattern pieces, which I've already done. So here we go. So once again, we're going to not many darts, we're going to create the suppression for this through seams. So I need you to go to the flatter bit of your pattern master, this bit here, and I want you to connect it up to you draw a line from the notch to the bust point. Okay, like that. And on the back, I want you again draw a nice, reasonably flat line from the notches here on the armhole to the top of the dart. Okay, so watch what we're going to do now. So, I'm going to get my scissors again, and I'm going to cut around the pattern pieces. Deal with the front to begin with. Cut off that other bit of side seam here. No, I just cut them all out and then we'll deal with them separately. Right, that's my front cut out. Let me get the back cut out. tucking around the neckline. Okay, so this time the side panel here, okay, we already have the pattern for that. And that is this pattern here, which I'm just going to cut out. Oops, roll off the table. So I'm just cutting around that nice curved line which I drew into the notch in the armhole. That's my side panel. Getting rid of those ghastly big darts. And the dart here at the shoulder, just getting rid of that. That goes in the bin. Bring my pattern pieces around so they're sitting the right way up. So there's my dart. So what I'm doing here, I'm closing those over, closing the dart and sticking them together. And I've now created both panels for the, and that's a little bit, that's not quite right, so let me just take off, there's too much a little gap there, so let's get rid of that. Oh, crumbs. Let's keep them together with my little weights. Weights are great things. Place the patterns together. And there's my first, there's the patterns for the front. And on the back here, again, I'm just going to get rid of this dart. It goes in the bin. I'm going to cut around the curved line that I drew into the armhole. And there's my back side panel. And I've got this dart up on the shoulder. Now what we do with this, it's difficult to actually manipulate this out of the pattern. So the best thing to do is, the width of this little dart on the shoulder is 2 centimetres. Let's take it off the shoulder end. So I'm taking 2 centimetres off the shoulder end and I'm reshaping my armhole. And that dart has been taken off now. I'm straightening making sure that line, the shoulder line, is perfectly straight. And removing the dart off the end of the shoulder. And there I've got my back pattern. Now again, if we look at the sketch, this here is only half of the pattern, and we want the full pattern. So I need you to place that on top of a folded piece of paper, which I've already done. So I need you to lay that on top of a folded piece of paper, draw around it, cut it out, and there you're going to get your full front pattern. And I've just traced around the side panel, the patterns as well. There's my side front, which I've got labelled already. There's my side back, which I've got labelled already. And finally, I've got my back panel. So I've got all the patterns now. Let's lay them out so you can see them. So there you go. There we go. So you can literally label these. Centre front panel, we only need one of those. Cut one. Side front panel, you need a left and right, so you cut a pair of those. Side back panel, you need a left and a right. Cut one pair. And we're going to put a zip in the centre back of our princess line bodice, so we need to have need two of those because the zip will go through the centre back seam, and so you need to cut one pair. Again, I've put in all the grain lines, that's vital. And once again, you need to place your patterns together and put in the balance notches. So my notches, where have they gone to? Okay, so we know this is going to fit perfectly because we know it's going to fit, so you can swivel it around, put in a balance notch somewhere near on the curve, and that will help with the sewing process. So you'll do exactly the same thing on the, my notches are really blunt, they're not cutting at all very well. So that will now give you your princess line where the seams are going into the armhole. So if you wanted to make this up, you'd have to draw around all of these four pieces of pattern again and add on your centimetre seam and then a 2 centimetre seam at the back. Okay, so what I want you to do, I want you to create the patterns for both of these princess lines. The princess line where the seam's going into the shoulder, and the princess line like this where the front seam's going into the armhole. I want you to create the patterns for both, and I want you to take one of them only. I want you to draw around the pattern again, add on the seams, cut it out in fabric and sew it up.